Right. We are going to call the meeting to order. Great to see everyone on this beautiful day. We have a full agenda today, but I want to begin with asking for a motion to approve the minutes from the September 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Great. Second. Wonderful. Any discussion or edits? Oh, what a good question.
Have we heard from Jeffrey whether or not he's?
I have not.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's surprising because I don't think.
Ken, would you be willing to take minutes for us?
Asking you, Shelby.
That's my job on our board.
I'm gonna be doing it for her tonight too, so.
Yes, double duty.
Okay. Wait a moment, to get organized.
Thank you, Ken.
We'll jot down
I
things.
got it.
We'll be kind and forgiving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So any comments on the September? Nope, seeing none. Motion to approve. Wait, did we do that?
Yeah.
All in
Okay.
favor?
All in favor. Let's do all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed or abstain? Oh,
Here's Jeffrey.
Ken is
The minutes.
safe. Yeah, we just accepted the minutes.
Here you are, perfect timing.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
timing.
Good to hear.
Great. All right. They are accepted. And I am speaking kind of slowly, let Jeffrey get his bearings, but I think it will be fine. We're going to go into work group reports. And I don't know, I might have missed it, but was there anything written from the communications group? And if not, may I ask for a verbal?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
My question is, I kind of have a bit to go over just with the website stuff. My goal is to maybe have this group approve it today. Jen is speaking on November 6th to a group of people, and I think it would be good. We were discussing printing the QR code to the website and having that as a deliverable for that event. So I don't know if everybody saw the slides, but I didn't know if it would be better to do that during burning issues instead of work group reports.
What are you looking for? Just the website approval?
So it would be the website approval and then the slides of everybody's headshot and bios. If
Mhm.
everybody's happy with theirs, it would be good to approve those, I think, today as well. And then I can kind of package that up, send it off to Monty and kind of
Mhm.
express our deadline to him. And I think our one other thing we just discussed was the rack card. I didn't hear too much back on substance of that, but we just kind of went over it because we just had a meeting right now. And I think we're gonna put a pin in it and I think I'm gonna restructure it a little and then maybe bring that next month
Okay,
and
great.
or in 2 months. See.
That may feed into the discussion about budgets as well for printing.
And we just went over some stuff with that as well, so maybe it just falls everywhere, communications, so.
For the website and the headshots, is it the same content that you already had Sean send to us, or is it different now?
I sent an updated copy from what we presented here, maybe, I know Sean distributed it, so it was a couple weeks
And
ago.
that's still the current version?
Yes, I think the
Okay.
one change we made today was the front page would have, just a statement being like our meetings are every third Monday of the month and are open to the public at City Hall, like kind of just a generic, come in if you want to. But I think that's the only change we made today. Otherwise, yeah, all the same.
I think you did a really nice job on them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks great.
It looks really good.
I would be okay pulling it up right now.
Let's do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be pretty quick.
We can pull up, is it possible to pull up the web?
Let's see.
For the,
Let me go and find it first.
Do we want to do the other one?
sure.
Updates? Well,
Yeah, let's do that and then we'll.
Because I think we have
circle
more
back.
too, besides that.
Oh, you do?
Jason's stuff,
Okay.
yeah.
Is it more on the communication? Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Great.
keep going.
No,
Well, wait. Do
Oh,
it last,
but-
yeah.
Oh, okay, come back to it at the end. Okay. DEAI group. Oh, did we lose Courtney? Catherine, are you?
I don't have, yeah, I'm here, but I don't have the agenda. I don't have the list.
I do.
There.
I'm
Okay.
back. Sorry, a donor just in my
Yeah.
office.
Okay, great. Courtney, be able to do a quick summary of our meeting?
Yeah, of course. So I believe Genevieve sent a really excellent self-assessment to Sean, which he shared with the whole group. So I'm in the process of completing the self-assessment that has to do with sort of evaluating where your organization is in time as it relates to accessibility. There are tons of great resources attached to this self-assessment. So we began discussing as a group how we can, as opposed to recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel, how we can take from some really accessible and helpful models and build out from there. So we began developing a couple of, a handful of focus areas, which are in the minutes. And another idea that sort of bubbled up from that is having kind of a sort of a, not a lecture series, but a presentation series that takes on a number of different DEIA issues. Linnea and I had discussed some issues that both of our organizations bumped into, and we thought it might be effective to host some important topical discussions amongst this group and share it out to the public. So if the public wants to participate as well. So we've been brainstorming topics for these presentations and kind of collecting a list. One of our other group members, Jessica, was speaking with a resource in Manchester in their Arts and Cultural Commission as well, to try to get them to come in and do a topical presentation. I don't know that that's going to work, but we'll continue to brainstorm on that. And then we talked about a couple of different issues regarding different performance spaces for artists in terms of accessibility, and also the potential of establishing affinity groups for arts and cultural organizations, young professionals, caretaker affinity groups, LGBTQ+, BIPOC, et cetera. And what that would mean to create communities around, or smaller communities around this idea for resources and just sharing in general. I think that's it. Quick summary.
Sounds good. Are there any questions from the, for the group?
We would just ask if the commission as a whole has ideas or specific topics that they might be interested hearing a presentation about from people working in these spaces or experts in the area to let us know as we're collecting different topic ideas.
And if anyone else tries out the self-assessment, which is more an organizational self-assessment.
It is, yeah.
Right?
That was from the
Yeah.
NEA accessibility checklist that you have to fill out with every grant.
Yes. So it's a useful tool. Highly recommend. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not really clear on how the group would define its mission. You know, in terms of, is it, I know that there's handicap accessibility, there's minority groups and things like that. And there's how the organizations do, but like going beyond that into the larger community, I guess I'd be interested in hearing like a mission statement, because it's not really crystal clear in my head.
I think it's a great question. We were running off of what had come up and bubbled up through the cultural report, which I don't have right now in front of me. And so we were tackling the different items that were coming up under the DEI from the cultural report. I don't know, Courtney, you want to jump in with any, or anyone else on the subgroup?
I mean, because part of it, what bubbled up in there was about all parts of Portsmouth, you know, and not just like the young professional groups, the LGBT groups. Okay, I get that part. But then part of the mission was about having all parts of Portsmouth and the diversity of what's being offered at the various, you know, not just can people in wheelchairs get in.
Right.
Is everybody accepted?
Yep, absolutely.
The offerings at the various organizations catering to wider diversity of interests.
I would say from being on the cultural plan and remembering how we put the list together, what we pulled out for each work group of the first tasks were the things that had gotten the most votes
Yeah.
by us as a commission. So I would have to go back and look, but I know those things did bubble up. They just may not have been on the short-term priority list in terms of what we as a commission felt were the top priorities to address it immediately for us. I mean, we won't address them. It's just, these are the short-term ones. So that's a good reminder to all of our work groups that beyond what we've been tasked with, there's much more for us to all be doing. There's no shortage of kind of charges from the cultural plan for us to work forward.
I think,
That's better now. Too late.
but I think to the point of what are we, you had mentioned the greater diversity and acceptance of people for where they are, maybe physically in space as well as just who they come as. A lot of the work, and I've really been appreciating working with Courtney because she comes with a wealth of background from her work in Chicago, has been, you do have to establish some baselines of like, okay, here's where we are, here's where we'd like to go. And so a lot of, especially what we were talking about early in the group about the self-assessment is not just accessibility. Correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, but there is I mean, Courtney has a lot of great work on really looking holistically at the Arts Festival and how they are approaching different diversity elements. And she knows that baseline and she knows where they've made progress over the last few years. So I think the self-assessment and then also this idea of topical presentations and getting more informed about how we do this work, because we can't dictate anything, but getting these resources out for how you establish the baseline and then the
Okay.
metrics.
Yeah, well, when you mention about baselines,
Mhm.
then I guess that kind of brings it together in my head as to why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going. So thank
Yep.
you.
Can I ask or just make a suggestion, not even a suggestion, a comment? I really like the idea of a speaker series, based on organizational needs, artistic needs. I know, Karen's mentioned how would you work on making a home studio accessible? I mean, what are some of the questions and issues that artists and arts organizations have around this issue? I know it came up, people during the cultural plan, people talked about, well, I can't always afford a ticket. Well, if that's so how do organizations offer tickets at a lower price when they're barely making money? Those are just questions I think would be great to have discussion around.
And maybe if I could continue to share kind of a small organization perspective, because I know with the large organization we talked about this last time, that there's grant requirements that you have to document and prove accessibility, but the smaller organizations don't. So it's more like, it's obviously a good thing to do. So just for example, I did a lot of research, and I think as everybody knows, definitely want my studio to continue to be as accessible as possible. And just looking into a ramp, a portable ramp, which can be very heavy. And as somebody who's had back surgery, like I can't lift, but I was able to find a telescoping ramp that's in 2 parts that I can easily put out as needed. So just little things like that. And I just wrote myself a note to change my Google. So if we have individuals that want to take classes or participate in opportunities, just to make sure that your profile for your organization does state, in fact, that you are handicap accessible. It's just little things like that I think could go.
Thank you.
I had one more question just based on the minutes or the notes from that meeting. Encourage arts organizations throughout the community to complete this survey with some incentive to do so. If we had grant making ability, if we were a grantor or something like that, we could say a prerequisite of applying for a grant through the Arts and Cultural Commission would be you have to fill out this ability survey. I know other grantors do that. I'd be curious to know what incentives we think we might have in the future at the commission, if that might be one. I'm also curious in establishing a baseline, who's actually collecting these survey results, and how they're being consolidated into one sort of assessment of how the city of Portsmouth is doing. think those are probably unanswerable in this meeting, but I'd want to make sure that they don't stay open-ended
Right.
in how we approach this.
I agree on that. I don't, Courtney, any other thoughts to add there as you're working through the self-assessment?
No, I agree. I mean, I think part of when we looked at what came from all of the previous work that we had done as a cultural group, part of, I think, making any change is identifying where you're at currently. And I think we were thinking collecting the information, but also for just encouraging organizations to be aware of it generally. When I came to the festival, they had never tracked how many female artists they had, how many BIPOC artists they had. I mean, none of that stuff had ever historically been tracked. So just creating a tracking system, what types of things we had shared in terms of accessibility needs and also how we address them. It just had not historically been tracked. So I think creating awareness that, you know, whether we're collecting the information or just as an organization, a baseline is important in order to make improvements and goals, I think is helpful. So hear everything that everyone said and we'll continue to build from there.
Great questions.
Thanks, Courtney.
All right, I'm going to move forward to the collaboration and resources work group.
Report out for the group. So we actually had a fun opportunity and took a field trip, which is always fun. And we went to the Art Center in Dover, and this is a Chinburg property, and had the chance to meet with Rebecca Proctor, who's the curator of the Art Center. And it was really an interesting opportunity to see how she has taken basically an old mill that contains a gallery, and she's got, I think it was about 15 artists or so that are there. They pay membership. They have their studio there, kind of open air. They've done everything from weddings to plays. So they do use, you know, kind of the gallery, the stage space. So it's just interesting to see, you know, how, you know, their business model and how they're operating in a way that allows artists at least to showcase their work there. We were under the impression that they also had the residential aspect, and they don't have that directly tied to the art center. They do happen to have some artists that live there that are able to afford it, but they really don't really have affordable living space, so to speak. But it was interesting to just to learn more about these models. We are in discussion right now with another actual live workspace in Boston called Fenway Studios, and we're going to be doing a virtual visit with them sometime in the next several weeks. So that's another one. And I don't know if I wanted to get there yesterday. I was doing parts of the film festival, but I couldn't go. But did anybody happen to see the Candy Factory yesterday? Film festival, another model in Brooklyn. I did do a little bit of research on it. I'm saying past tense because I can't find anything that's indicating that artists are still living there, but they did have artists living there for at least 40 years, which was pretty impressive. So, and again, it's one good-natured person that buys these properties and puts a lot of money into it and makes it affordable for artists to live, work there. So we're just going to continue in our quest to learn about different models in and outside of New Hampshire. And we do have a meeting scheduled with Beth Morrow, I think all of you know, city councilor, and she's also the head of the planning board, to learn about potential zoning opportunities. What can we be considering and contemplating here in the city of Portsmouth for live workspace? So Beth is going to help guide us in that conversation. And that's scheduled for the 11th of November. So any questions, anything that anybody else wants to add?
I would have just one
There's
organization.
one
you
in
may wanna-
Omaha.
Oops, sorry.
There's also one in Omaha. It's the Bemis, and they actually have grants for the artists to come and have a stipend to live and work within the facility. It's a pretty major deal. I can get some contact information for that one.
Can you say the name of it again?
Bemis, BEMIS.
Thanks, Kathy. We'll add that to our list because we're keeping an ongoing list here, and that's one we can
Yeah.
check out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because their website too, I mean, there's, you apply for a position to be part of it, and they actually give you a stipend, they have a place to live. It's for X amount of time. It's not like forever you're gonna live there and work there. It's to kind of bring fresh blood into the city, allow artists to interact with each other and with the city, as well as develop and grow as artists. And they can either, they can move on or they can reapply and their situation is.
great. Thank you.
I would just have one organization to add to that, AS 220 in Providence, Rhode Island. Has some interesting live workspace, and they've coordinated, I want to say, with developers in 3 specific buildings. I think they have between 14 and 20 live workspace studios in each of the buildings. I think they host over 50 people a year in those spaces. And it would be an easy drive, and it's an amazing organization. So
And the name of it was AS 220?
AS 220 in Providence. Yep.
And not as in Frank.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, great. Sounds like more field trips. Yeah.
Sounds
woohoo.
All right, well, let's circle back to our communications group.
Webpage.
So the first time I presented, I kind of had like a mock-up of what the city website would look like. To make Monty's life easier, I just have it listed as like he can copy and paste. But at the very end of the slideshow, I still mocked it up again because sometimes we like to look.
So you want to keep going here?
It's up to you. So since we've gotten this, Eli very nicely sent me, if you want to go to page one more down. So for the collaboration and resources, you sent a good current focus. So I have that now. Sorry, I didn't send an update. And so DEAIs could use just a 1 sentence. You mentioned like mission statements. I guess this is me taking a stab at it, like put for each one like a primary goal sentence. So if you want a baseline to go from, you can check that out. And then otherwise, if you want to scroll all the way to the bottom, sure. So this would be the home page. Go up
You go
one
back
a
up one.
little bit. A little bit higher. Perfect. So this would be kind of like where they landed when they click our name. And so what I was saying before, the one thing we added was above our mission. I put our meetings are held every 3rd Monday of the month in this room. I'll make sure it's correct, at 1 to 2:30, and are open to the public. So that got added today. Otherwise, everything's the same. So you'll see the side menu bar. The cultural plan would be the same as it is today, it just goes right to the cultural plan. The work groups one, I just went over with the little mission statement, the current focus, so we could kind of update that maybe once quarterly is maybe ambitious, but if we're working on new stuff, just push that along. And then the commission details would be what's there right now, so kind of our ordinance, that's what it's called. But anyway, so I think it's pretty much ready to go at this point, and even maybe if it's not 100% perfect, it's a good jumping off point to just have some.
Just a thought, where you had the primary goal, we have a focused objective. I can't think that's sort of saying the same thing. Maybe not, but so you've got the pillars, which I think looks great, but if you go back and you wanted everybody to fill in their current focus, should we just go with the focused objective that we already have in the cultural plan, just for consistency?
Sure.
Is that
Page you're
okay?
looking on.
Well, on page 7, so under each pillar, it has and we did work on this quite a bit as a subcommittee.
Yeah.
It's just take the language. I mean, if you want to edit it, some of these it's a small paragraph. but
Yeah,
The focus objective is right there.
and so put that you're saying on the homepage under each.
Right under your current focus, just call it focused objective or something. And that way it's just everything is consistent.
Okay,
Is that the same as primary goals? Do we even need the 2 of them?
And there's 5 pillars and only 3 committees, so.
yeah, I was about to say, do we
Mhm.
want to change, maybe, Sean, do you want to go up, the. to the home
Focus,
page? I have, those are the pillars. So do you want me to put I could do the focus objective from each there?
Sure, yeah,
And then,
yeah.
And the current working groups makes sense.
Okay.
Current focus is, you know, we went through and picked out what low hanging fruit we're going after right now. And those are our current focuses.
Yeah.
You know, pulling in from the various things, you know, we're doing our dots stuff.
yeah, and the one I put for the communications or group is literally, I think it's like to get the word out about it. So like very simple at the moment. Eli, do you remember what yours was?
I can pull it up. I mean, I'm still a little bit vague. If we want to standardize it and just give that blurb, I don't think we need primary goals or current focus, because it just is those are the overarching everything that is concerned with collaboration and resources would be that description, I think. Right? So it's more a matter of if we want the community to know what our current thing is.
Yeah, and just have it change as needed.
And have it change.
Yeah, that's a good
update it.
idea, yeah.
So maybe for the work groups, is there a way of time
Providing
delineating,
those
like
updates.
yeah, kind of saying work like current work groups for, we're doing by fiscal year? I can't remember kind of like what, I would say fiscal year is what comes to mind, but.
So are you
some
talking
time
about
period.
combining under this section, primary goals and current focus? That.
Well, I think that's what,
If we were to use the blurbs that are standardized in this. it would
But they'll be under the pillars already.
So if we wanted to have the current focus, so the community knows what of that giant pillar we're actually dealing
Right.
with right now, then it requires updating it periodically.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we should.
Yeah.
And Eli, I pulled it up because if we want to make any other changes, I'll just note them right now too, because that makes my life a little easier. So for collaboration resources, we came up with building an inventory of existing art spaces while investigating art spaces nationwide, which might be used as a model for the city of Portsmouth.
Is that okay with the rest of that group?
That's quite good.
So
Um,
then we
You see,
just-
that's an update from what you're seeing on page.
I came up with
6 and
that.
7.
I emailed her. I just came up with that.
No, what I'm saying is, in terms of opposed just taking from 6 and 7, that's more specific and I like it.
Because it's a current focus.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But when you talk current focus, it means short and long-term goals. That this is just doing short-term goal,
The primary goals would detail the long-term goals, right?
right?
And current focus is short term.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
So-
what
Okay,
we decided we're gonna put our energy in right now.
What we originally
So we
talked
can't do
about,
everything.
doing like a project section, but I think what we kind of determined was the work groups kind of see like the projects right now that we're working on. So kind of breaking it up by this makes it a little bit more kind of clear. So we can definitely, people want to restructure this or update if they can. Like I said, I kind of just, for the primary goals, like took a whack at writing something.
So it sounds
So
like maybe
why don't
again,
you just give them a deadline, Teresa? If a work group doesn't like what's written, they send Teresa the corrected version.
Mhm.
By X date, you pick it.
and what I'm thinking is it's just that like work group may be what's getting us confused. So rather than, I know we're calling them work groups, but this is like current work or something like that. Like that's what we're trying to distinguish this page from the
Yeah.
one if you scrolled up. Right, this,
Yeah.
like that's the permanent. Here's, or I
Right.
mean, permanent for as long as the cultural plan is.
Do we need to make it clear? We're talking about long-term and short-term plans. I mean, I just get this feeling there's some confusion here about what we're trying to say.
It's a good point. If there's confusion in this room, it might exist.
Yeah, I
outside
mean,
this room.
because I think the current focus is our short-term plan. And, you know, these are long-term plan, and I think. You
Well,
know,
I
I
guess
think
that's why I was saying sorry, Sean, but can you go down to the next?
this is easy.
So just,
Fingers crossed.
so instead of having primary goals there, just put current focus.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the
Yep.
primary goals are already
Already
up
up
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll
Right.
reduce
And so
the
current
confusion.
focus is.
Yeah.
This is what
You know,
we're-
it's what we're working on. Because, well, the
Yeah.
thing that's good about that is when I tell people I'm on this commission, they say, well, what are you doing? And I mean, I can talk about what we're doing in the,
Sure.
but, you know, it'd be really good to say, well, here, you know, we all pick these shorts, you know, this is what we're all working on right now.
Right.
And I think that's important because, you know, people always say, well, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
If it's not in the paper, you're not doing.
That's good. And then I think one thing to keep in mind, if we're redoing this a little, is just, I think just being cognizant of, Monty's time on like updating the website. Like, we don't want to be doing it probably every month. Like, that's probably a little too often. So just, I don't really know what that means, but like Jason, you could probably dive in after this about what you've been working on. And honestly, I'm already thinking after we hear this, like getting the word out about ACC, like, yeah, but we are actually now doing more stuff as well. So
Do you need a vote though, Teresa? We talked about, do we need a vote to approve this?
yeah, I was wondering that.
Sure. I have a question though, for resources, are we linking? Let me rephrase that. I'd love to find a way to list like recent successes or things we have achieved, including especially the home ordinance. Is that under resources?
I think that's a great place for it, right?
Or
And
is there somewhere else?
Um, I think definitely we
Oh, not
should,
collaboration resources, but resources.
yeah, resources.
Yeah,
that,
sorry, I'm looking at the like
Yeah.
the side menu that's
If
there
I-
where work groups and resources.
It
commission-
should be the next slide. No, one more, sorry. Oh. No, it's up the top. So what I had listed, which I think the ordinance is a great
Okay.
spot for this, I had the surveys that we have now on the side, and then, I think we talked about this maybe 2 meetings ago. There's like a list of 10 reasons to support the arts, which is just like a nice list. And I think as we find more interesting resources, it would be nice to just highlight them and things to look at. I think maybe our achievements and work we've done should go at the top first, and then maybe
Yes.
have like other resources below that, or like things to check out if you really want to know. So I'll add that.
That'd be great.
Teresa, I have a quick follow-up. First, thank you for this.
Yeah.
I immediately think this is gonna be more effective than our current page, so.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you. Adding the dates to the front of it, I don't know if this is always gonna be the case or not. Should we say typically meets on the third? Like, just add the word typically in there,
Yeah.
just, they can look at the full calendar if they want.
Yeah.
To verify, but in case we have a second Monday instead of a third in twenty
Right,
twenty-five or
because,
something
yeah, a
like that.
holiday or something like that.
That's one fewer thing to change in
Yeah.
perpetuity.
Definitely. And maybe even like a check the city calendar, putting a
Mhm.
link back to the
Right,
calendar
yep,
would be
right.
a good thing to have there.
And then the only other question I have, just seeing again, the names of everybody serving in these work groups. Do we have any follow-up on if we need to get an alternate member in here for Robin's place? Are we mandated to have that 13th member?
It's not a requirement, but it will be nice. So, I'll check in again with the city clerk. I should tell you that the city clerk is a bit overwhelmed right now with election planning. So, and she has a new deputy as well. So, she's been training a new deputy for a while. So, this is not probably as urgent as what's going on currently. So, but hopefully by middle of next month, we can.
Were there
Work on an
original
appointment.
applicants who weren't on the list? I mean,
Yes.
Should they be contacted to see if they're still interested?
They will be because their applications stay good for a year.
But it would still
So-
go through the clerk.
Right, it has to go through the clerk's
Okay.
office and then the mayor. The mayor goes through and reviews and selects someone. But the applications that are in will automatically be reviewed. And then anyone else who wants to apply would also be reviewed. So,
Just making sure we're in compliance. I didn't see the number 13 in the strategic or in the cultural plan. Like, it's just a number that somebody made that decision about, but
yeah, it was the committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee made the decision that was logical. But we, yeah, it's in the
Yeah, it's in the
ordinance, how many people can be appointed,
okay.
but you can have empty spots, so.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So I guess the question for approval, because it's a website, so it's happily, this isn't going to press and we can't change it. So it feels like we should be able to do a approval with continual, refinements for clarity, right? Does that seem right? Like, does everyone maybe, so ask for a motion to.
So I'll make a motion with consideration for the edits today to approve the website as presented.
Great.
Website update as presented.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any nays?
I have a follow-up question because I just didn't see it. Was there a link to all those beautiful headshots that you?
Yes, so it'll
Or is
be
that
in
gonna be a
that
separate thing?
same, oh, well, so I had it as going at the bottom of the homepage. I thought that was a nice place for it. And that was the other thing I was gonna say, it would be nice to approve today. The bios, yeah, it's that link, because it was too, all the photos are so good, it was too big to attach. So, it is nicely a drive link.
I love it.
The only changes I've made to this was Sean now has a slide, so that wasn't in there, so that was
Yeah.
awesome. That's right, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Doesn't look like it wants to, no problem.
Yeah. But otherwise, as long as people liked their bios, pictures and title, I think that's probably the most important. And then I just put, I'm sure everyone saw like which work group.
Yeah.
Here.
Great.
And then, yeah, I think what we kind of discussed, just to go back to the rat card, is maybe making the look and feel of the rat card maybe similar to that, like same colors, fonts.
Right.
Somehow I'll have to noodle on it,
Love that.
but
We'd have a style guide.
I have it,
Okay.
don't worry.
So
I
just-
love
I
style
know.
guides.
Doodles aren't in the style guide, which is why there's a pin in it now. So now that it's
Yeah.
not an art project for me, it's going to the back of the queue.
Is this live now or is this pending the motion we just passed goes on?
It's whenever Monty can get.
So my next step is gonna be to make sure I kind of throw in everything we talked about today, updating the pillars to match the plan. Maybe for the work groups, if DEAI just wants to think today about it, just a current focus sentence, just to have something. I really think maybe once it's live, we could just do another quick review and just see if there's anything like, oh, that looks horrible, or hey, we could add this now that we at least have the bones up.
Okay. So yes, the-
control
over it, Yeah, yeah, Jeffrey. So-
right, but the motion we just passed sets in motion to go live.
Yes.
Right,
Yes,
and so
exactly.
I'm gonna tell Monty the date, November 6th, nicely. And hope that, it's on there, but it is the day after the election as well, so I'm sure that every committee and every.
So just for protocol, if you would send it to me, feel free to copy Monty, but then that's for me to go to him, and
Sure, that's
'Cause he-
perfect,
he doesn't even he doesn't, a lot of people in City Hall update their own websites.
okay,
So he's not like the website, he's not a webmaster. Just to be clear.
Sean, that was a question we had, because some of our stuff could be simple little things that we could do so that he doesn't have to do that, but we don't know what the protocol is.
Right. Making a note.
that's fine. So I'll send it.
They may tell me to do it, which could be possible.
That's why I put it in plain text so you can copy and paste it.
That's why you get a slide.
I should note that for security reasons, it's very unlikely that anyone on this
Right.
committee is gonna be updating it unless it's Sean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just.
Right.
Yes, no, but,
Give us the keys
but the key is if it goes through me, then I have the ability to go and ask for
Right.
assistance.
That makes sense.
Versus
Sean.
people up from outside, everybody asking Monty. can-
Yeah, well, I feel bad because he sent me the style guide
Yeah.
after. I was like, how does this all look? And he was just like,
Yeah, here's the style guide.
yeah, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Um,
well, we're getting there.
great. And I was gonna say, if everyone's comfortable, I think the bios are really a part of the website, so I don't think we need to do a separate vote on that.
agree with that.
Yeah, so wonderful. Thank you for all the work on
Yeah,
it.
Thank you, Teresa.
Awesome.
Stop sharing now.
All right, and there's more, but wait, there's more.
But there's more.
Communications.
Yes, the communications work group is exploring an opportunity to make available temporary but fixed signage opportunities for qualifying arts nonprofits to help drive awareness of key events and cultural happenings throughout the year. So this has been something that individual organizations have been trying to do for some time with limited success. I have already spoken with Councillor Cook, so she's involved in this the early involvement in this process. But what we're finding, and Kate can help me with the language, but I don't know if there's an ordinance or a lack of an ordinance that prohibits arts organizations from being able to get signage to promote events. Perhaps you could speak to it.
It's not just arts organizations.
Right.
It's a signage ordinance.
signage
Prevents anybody from hanging banners, as an example.
Right. Or
Not
like.
picking on art.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do,
Right,
and
just arts.
And thank you for that
Yeah.
qualifier, but what we're trying to do is to build a case for support for the arts. Obviously, the AFTA study showed over a $70 million economic impact from the arts in 2022 alone. Looking at the AFTA study, the AFTA focus groups, the things that really came out were the ability to improve upon communication throughout the city of what was happening. One of the other things that came through loud and clear was that the city could better support, whether financially or through its actions, support these arts organizations, which are driving so much impact to the economy. Fact is that other cities have found a way to do it. I've had phone calls with the cities of Nashua and Manchester over the last 10 days. I've got a call coming up with Concord as well. So they've got banner programs and some signage opportunities in the downtown area. So they've figured it out. And so the hope is that we can learn a little bit more how they're doing it. Just to give you a quick overview of the banner program. So Nashua has one banner, Manchester has 4. So that would be over like a Congress Street, a can't miss location as we kind of described it. City gets first dibs at that for promoting any city related events, but on an availability basis, qualifying organizations can put in an application to utilize that space for a nominal fee, a week, 2 weeks. So that's kind of there's an interesting model there. They've figured out a way to, not have, hate speech and all those other things that we don't want have happening. I know obviously city attorneys will be very sensitive to that, but I'll get more information on that. Nashville also has a downtown improvement committee, which controls up to 80 posters and like street signs. And so they found a way to do that, and they're promoting various things throughout the year. So again, what we want to do is to try to build a case for support. We know all sorts of organizations would love to have access to signage, but all sorts of organizations do not deliver the type of economic impact to the city that the arts do. So, we think that we can build that. Obviously, I think what we need most is Kate's direction. We'll gather the information, which has already started, and with her assistance and guidance, hopefully begin to really craft a compelling story and see if we can define what those qualifying criteria would be. What types of organizations would be eligible for it, based upon what qualification criteria. So we've started the information gathering part. Next will be to set up some separate time with Kate to kind of try to move the ball forward. Any questions on any of this?
We tossed this around last year as well. And when I was in Taos, New Mexico, they had beautiful little banners hanging from the lamp posts.
Right.
And I know Portsmouth had those around the
Portsmouth 400, yeah.
I don't know if the hardware has been taken down, but the thinking is the hardware is already, somebody purchased that. Well, obviously the city purchased that. Could it just stay up and just have the banners be revolving? And I think all, small, big organizations, city related events, I think it'd be wonderful. And I thought it was very tastefully done in Taos. It was really a nice way to support, and it was exclusive to the arts. Everything I saw was artists, like their best work or art venue. This show is coming up in 2 weeks. The city's doing this, on the Central Green. It was really nicely done.
Yep. Not that this point would have much sway with the city attorneys, but I think it's important for us to all note is, the idea, the conversations that I was having with some of the bigger arts organizations around town, the thinking was, when every organization has one ask, it's easy for the city to say no. And the idea we had was, well, how do we create a collective agreement, get lots of organizations saying, hey, this one thing. And so that's kind of how we branded it. It's, this one thing. This one thing would be instrumental in helping drive awareness and attendance at key events, and help maintain the health of these organizations.
Oh, I was just going to add that one of the biggest things that we heard in all the surveys for the cultural plan was there needs to be some central information place where people can find out what's going on. And we've determined, we've all talked about it, that that's pretty much impossible
Mhm.
for the city to do. But this is a way to communicate what is going on to the city in a big way. And that will help with that particular issue. So.
And I will echo what Sean said about there are some bigger challenges around this because there are many organizations and individuals in the community that would like to utilize public space for signage. Think about a major nonprofit that has their 20th anniversary and they're going to want banners for to celebrate their 20th year in operation. But if we work collectively on something that is more generic, so it benefits all, we are more likely to get to move forward with a project like this. And there are challenges around this. The city does have a sign ordinance that we've been working on for a few years. And so that creates challenges and it costs a lot of money to install and remove those banners. So that's why the Portsmouth 400 was able to do it because they stayed up for an entire year. So that's something that we would have to work through. What does a fee structure really look like for something like this at the city level too?
And the positive thing in obviously thinking ahead that came up, labor costs and installation costs, and the organizations that we've spoken with thus far have all expressed a willingness to actually cover those costs, whether directly or through some type of sponsorship of that. So,
yeah.
So would the vision be that the banners would change with shows, with programs? Like that's a lot of banner expense, right? For whoever is buying them versus a generic banner that says
Arts and Go.
There's, here's a website, like I'm thinking about Go Portsmouth, where that's where we send people who are visiting Portsmouth and there's attractions and there's restaurants and there's events and there's things of that nature. That's just what popped into my head.
Sure. I think you'll have a limited number of organizations that would be, qualified for it. And I'm sure the music hall would have liked to have had banners all over the place for the film festival just now.
They did.
But according to Jason, it was like they waited to they didn't get approval till the last minute. And I think large events like that, yeah, I don't think people are gonna want to spend the money to put up something on a very regular basis, just,
And I think there would be a lot of details to iron out, but I think the idea was
yep.
to make available to qualifying organizations, maybe X number of spots, you get 2 opportunities a year or 3, or, whatever the number is. But, so you can't have the same organization taking it every time. It's more, hey, this organization has a couple key events that occur, Ghost on the
Yep,
Bank. or-
exactly.
have good
By the way,
criteria.
Ghosts on the Bank is coming up.
Have good specific criteria as to who is a qualifying organization.
So,
Something.
oh, Catherine.
So, I'm sitting in Boston right now. And for the marathon, for the Head of the Charles that just got finished, the organizations pay for all of the banners. They have to be approved through what the parameters of the city is set up, but they have volunteers that are in charge of installing and deinstalling them, and it's on a very specific quick schedule. So like things come down immediately and then they go back up whenever they've put in for that time frame. But the cost of those the banners runs to the organization as well as within the timetable, and they're responsible for getting them up and out. So it wouldn't necessarily be that it falls onto the city to make sure that what the cost of that is. It falls on the organizations for their volunteers that they utilize.
Yeah, and just be mindful. Oh, sorry, did you have were you finished? Okay. That this is a preliminary kind of like, okay, this is something working on. I think getting those models from other cities, because again, a lot of places are doing this and they are specific, I think, to film festivals or performing arts or art shows and things coming up. So I think we can gather those examples together. But we have just about 35 minutes left. So was there anything? Yes.
Can I add a really quick thing? Jason, I thought you made a great case for this. So whenever this comes up, you should be the one to speak about it because I was already swayed in order to,
Yeah,
so-
you're very good at it.
to the end of making it even more successful, hopefully, arts and culture, not just arts.
Yep.
To make sure that's highlighted. And also, I know it's nonprofit arts and culture. We do have for-profit arts and culture organizations in the city that would probably would appreciate a nod if it was deemed appropriate. Whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit, if they're incurring the nominal fee, somebody's paying for it anyway, and it's coming back on the organization. So those arts and culture organizations, even if they're for-profit, should still probably be considered in this. And it might make a stronger case again. That's the only reason to mention it.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move ahead to the next agenda item. I think we'll cut down the conversation to about 15 minutes on this and then 15 minutes on burning issues. But the tying into a lot of what we just heard through the work group reports is a funding discussion for this commission. And so the two questions here, and I would suggest we start with the first one, which is what does the ACC need funding for? Our little ACC. And what funding avenues are available? So.
I can kick things off. In my conversation with the Nashua Arts Commission, so I met with two people, this commissioner from the Arts Commission and then the Director of Economic Development for the city of Nashua. So the Arts Commission in Nashua they actually have a budget. They have a $40,000 annual budget. They said what they do primarily with that $40,000 is give out grants to other artists and other smaller arts organizations. So about 30K of that goes out in the form of grants, but then they maintain some of those dollars to either do printed materials and or events. So, and one of the things that they suggested, I talked about, one of our challenges for the Arts Commission is just elevating our profile right now with the city of Portsmouth. And they said that was, one of their challenges as well. And so some of that budget, they're going to make sure that they're at some of the larger events that are happening in and around Nashua, and they've got a presence and they're handing out rack cards. So, we were just talking about it in the meeting prior, like, next year we'll be at the film festival and, we want to make sure that we kind of, we can't do every event, but we want to kind of take a look at the 12 months and say, okay, what are the 4 events this year that we are absolutely going to be at so that we're, promoting the cultural plan, promoting the Arts and Culture Commission, giving voice to some of the issues that we're working on and trying to tackle for the community.
I'd ask a question and follow up to last meeting. Sean, do you know, my concern would be my curiosity would be on the side of income for a body like this, because we're not a 501c3. But whether it's income or expense, does the ACC have a line item in the budget?
I'm gonna say no.
Does Park?
They made a CIP request. And it is in the CIP.
Forgive me, I don't know what CIP means.
Capital Improvement Plan,
Thank you.
sorry. So that's a 6-year lookout.
Yep.
And if it's approved, then, for example, we're in FY 25, FY 26, if the CIP is approved where they've got some funding, then that will move to the budget for that year.
Do they currently have any funding?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
They asked for what?
Well,
You probably help me, Counselor.
yeah, well, there's a % for art program,
Oh,
and
there's-
that's where they get their money. And the funding is on city projects that are capital improvement
Right.
projects, and they only get a %. And now the new limits on the ordinance, it doesn't trigger until a city project was $5 million or more. It triggers a % for art up to $300 million. So it's their maximum funding that they can get from a project, from any major city project, say like a police station, is $300,000 in funding. And that is to be used on a piece of public art for the city on city land. So there's like a very distinct like criteria here that's different. They're getting funding, but it is for public art on public property that is owned by the public.
And that's driven by the % for art ordinance, which was around before Park was around,
Yes.
right? Park is coming up on 2 years, but that % for art has been around for a long time.
A long
Would
time.
So
that-
if they wanted to publish a brochure to have at a table, that it's not for that, it's for the public art.
Correct.
It is for public art and it goes into the Public Art Trust and it is governed by that ordinance and the trustees. And
So-
so they make disbursements based upon council approval of a piece of public art. And so every one of those has to go before the council for approval. So, so yes, they have funding, but it is for maintenance of city-owned property
Makes sense.
and creation of city-owned property.
It's
So-
different than.
So,
You all are
so we
tasked.
don't have, the ACT doesn't have a stream of income. Are we allowed to have a stream of income? Like, do we need that written in? Park didn't exist prior and they still had a stream of income.
So,
Right,
the Public Art Trust had a stream of income, not park.
not
really.
part, right. They
Money
don't-
goes into the Public Art Trust, which is city funds for city taxpayers. Um, s- it would be very, very difficult for this commission to get a stream of funding from the city. The reason I'm saying that is we just went through a reevaluation process and a shift in taxes from a heavy shift in taxation from commercial to residential. And you have to remember that every tax dollar, that's somebody's paying those taxes for it to go to you. And so I would say that it would be very challenging right now to try to get a line item in the budget. That's part of the reason that when we wrote the ordinance, we were really careful to write in provisions that this entity could apply for state and federal grants, fundings that are designated for municipalities, because we thought that that was probably an easier avenue to get funding. And now, that's not to say that there has never been funding for art. At one point, there was a pilot program, and this was 7 or 8 years ago, for a percent of parking for arts.
Has that been taken off the books or is that?
It's just a pilot. So it only lasted for like a 2-year period or something like that. Might have only been 1 year. And it wasn't something that was passed by the council. It was an agreement that the city manager at the time agreed to. We'll set this aside for arts. That was when the city had, when ArtSpeak was still around. And so the funding was to go to ArtSpeak at the time. Then ArtSpeak dissolved. The program went away. And it was never a council program. So that did exist at one point. I will tell you that the majority of the funds from parking go to offset any improvements that we have downtown. That's what the parking revenue is used for. Like all those street improvements, underground improvements downtown, parking garages, all of that is funded from parking revenue. And then any excess parking revenue offsets taxation for residents. So, so again, anything that you're taking out of that, you have to think about that it doesn't offset taxation as much. It's another tax revenue source.
Okay, so the question
I-
that Linnea asked was what we need the funding for.
But we don't have any funding. We don't know an income stream. It sounds like we do have an income stream if we can apply to state and that's written into the
It's
ordinance.
written
that
into the
created this.
ordinance,
Okay.
yeah, that this,
Do you have a process, if we wanted to, go to someone and get a grant, do we have, are there city employees who do that, or do we have to pull these people together, or what's the process?
so yes, and so anybody from this organization, from this committee could do that. But also the city does have some individuals that are familiar with grant writing in the finance department who will also assist or help write those grants. So it depends upon where the grant is coming from. So for example, when it's a planning grant, the planning department will write the grant. But I've asked the city manager specifically this question, like, do we have anyone to write grants? And she said, yes, we have a few people on staff that are familiar with that process. So, and Sean would be the person who shepherded that process.
Can I ask a quick question about grants, because that is one of my specialties, is most grants require a match. So let's say we would write a grant, but it would require that the city match it in some way. So then
That's-
we're back to not having funding. Yeah.
There's no rules that you,
No,
you
but
can't,
many
that
of
say you can't ask for
the
whatever you
larger
want.
ones.
Yeah, you can ask
You
for it.
can ask for
You
whatever you
ask.
want.
Yeah.
That's, I think what we're
I'm
talking
just
about
trying
is
to-
what,
It shared the political environment at the moment.
Yeah.
With like where we would be with asking for money as an entity. Now, it's one thing asking for $10,000. That's one thing, but it's when you start asking for $30,000 or $40,000 that it starts getting to be a little bit more complicated. But maybe the ACC doesn't need $40,000 right now. So that's the real question, I think, is this first question. What do we need funding for? How much money do you think we need? And once we can identify that, then it's a lot easier to go back and say to the city manager, hey, this is what we think we need. Do you think this is something reasonable to put in the budget? And then to bring it forward to the council. Because it would ultimately come in as a line item under economic and community development.
I'm just curious too, for the percent of the arts, is there a way for the trustees, like, can we get some of that money as well for us if Park gets some? I'm just curious.
No, because it's so that's the challenge is that the park money is different because it's not going to outside entities. It is truly city money and it's staying in the city with the city. And most of the money that's that $25,000 in the CIP, the reason they allocated it was to make sure we had a maintenance budget mostly for existing public art projects. Because we don't want the Department of Public Works taking the money out of their regular budget. Does that make sense to everyone?
If
So-
we receive a grant, is that city money? It
Yeah.
would have to be received by someone.
The city would receive the money, but it would be designated for you.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer to this, Counselor, but like if ACC received a grant, would that automatically go into some trust fund, or does it go into an account for this group to manage?
It can just go into an account.
Okay.
I would think it would go into your budget. Like, that's what I would think. I mean, could you?
All of a sudden, this is looking better.
We have accounts. We have accounts. Not me. I don't have accounts.
So
It would go into it. I mean, but we have options there. I mean, if this group wanted to set up a trust, but setting up a trust means that you're
That's a
setting up an
whole-
additional layer of
You- Right.
administration and
Right.
regulation that I don't know that is necessary because the finance department does manage just accounts as well. So there are accounts for every.
Yeah.
department. So
One other question, Counselor. So if somebody wanted to donate funding
Oh, right.
to
Yeah.
this group, they would just have to follow our donation policy.
yes, exactly.
is
They
it,
could just
is it
call it-
just the ability to apply to state and fed? Like, what are our restrictions on funding? Can we receive individual gifts? What's written into the ordinance?
Yeah, I don't know.
So anyone can receive, we didn't in the ordinance, we did not allow for this group to fundraise separately. And the reason we did that is that we didn't want a repeat of what happened with ArtSpeak. There was a sense in the arts community that ArtSpeak was competing for local funding against other arts institutions.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing we want.
But state and federal grants are allowed.
State and federal grants that are designated for municipalities are allowed. It's that specific. It's, you don't want to apply for a grant that we don't want the ACC applying for a grant and competing against PMAS
Right.
for a grant, right? We're okay with the ACC applying for a grant and competing with Nashua,
Yeah.
you know? And that's kind of the way that we were thinking about this, is that there are a lot of funds that are set aside specifically for municipalities and for municipal art centers or for municipal, and that's what this organization should serve as and should be able to apply for those grants. Whereas in the past, we didn't even have an entity in Portsmouth that would qualify to apply for this grant.
Who do we? Offered to sponsor something that we're doing. That okay, someone says, I'll pay for rec cards. Is that okay?
The city is happy to take donations.
Okay.
Is what I will say.
Okay.
Yeah,
And they can be restricted as,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
If somebody decides that they want to, as long as no one's out soliciting, I mean, it's really critical. No one's out soliciting funds from anyone in the community.
Okay.
That's kind of. key.
So to the agenda, what do we need funding for, to the expense side of things now? I mean, I think we could easily write into a grant application that funding would partially fund a grant writer to write additional
Yeah.
applications. I mean, that could be an expense line.
But maybe just play that, the expense line out again, like why would we, so far I've heard rack cards several times. What else beyond rack
We
cards?
could ultimately be a grantor like Nashua. We could an open application
So-
for artists applied to the ACC.
So we, right,
One
that
of
would
the,
be a big step.
one of the questions I asked, one of the questions I asked of the folks from Nashua, because it's something that we've talked about many times, is how do you do stuff for Nashua outside of downtown? How do you get
Right.
all of
Yep.
Nashua feeling connected to the arts? And I love the answer. One of the things they have is this arts/party mobile that they make. Different neighborhoods can lease it to throw block parties, so they don't really have to pay anything. I think they cover like the cost of insurance. And so this truck with all this stuff, whatever the stuff is, fill in the blank, but stuff to host in a block party with art themes, sidewalk chalk. And so this vehicle is available to the community, and it goes out to the far reaches of Nashua. So to make, again, a great way to elevate the profile of the commission, great way to get those, those corridors outside of town feeling connected. And I think it opens up communication or conversations to be able to, hopefully grow the love of art and to identify artists out in those communities and to feel more connected, to the fabric of Portsmouth.
That made me think about an opportunity, because the library has a bookmobile program. So it's an opportunity for a partnership between the ACC and the library and the bookmobile. Maybe when the bookmobile goes out, maybe we have an arts program that goes with it. So wherever the bookmobile is, there's an opportunity for art engagement there. If it's setting up easels outside that have pieces of art, or if it's, a chalk program for kids or something associated with the bookmobile.
Like a performing artist or something could go out too.
Yeah.
The speaker series that you were talking about, and also offering workshops for artists, anything like that would be fabulous
Yeah.
things to sponsor.
It sounds like a next first step beyond kind of the needs of marketing materials. A lot of what we're talking about is programming. Is
Yeah,
what where a lot of our interests and ideas lie. So that's something we could think about either in terms of partnerships or in outside funding for programming. But to reference an earlier point you made, Jen, too, I know for a lot of the grants, you have to show established programming in order to get grant funding. A lot of times they don't, grantors do not want to fund new programs or new initiatives. So that's something we need to think about as well. If we want to start programming, where that kind of seed money would come from.
Although it's an interesting thought with something like the bookmobile, which is
Mhm.
established, that may open up a few more. Yeah.
New Hampshire Arts Commission has these periodical Peer Exchange Zoom meetings. And I think that would be a wonderful forum to roll out there. It's like, hey, what do you guys do? Of course, we get people from all over the state. And I mean, just listening to what's going on, it's like some of the things Jason was talking about earlier. They do have funding for various things, and just talking to them about not only how they spend money, but how they get money. Just because there are some places where they have like no money at all, and some that have a lot. But there are a lot of creative ideas out there, and it's, maybe we should try to get on the agenda or have that discussion on the agenda. Catherine.
I remember being in San Diego, and to kind of jump on the bookmobile thing, the libraries used to be able to check out art, like paintings for X amount of time for your home, which having funding for insurance for things like that would be great. But then people could actually have art accessible to them in their homes. They just check it back in.
Yeah.
It's another little thought.
Organization that came to mind might be AFTA. So I'm just thinking, gosh, where Portsmouth just participated and we were able to learn about how much money we're bringing in related to the arts. They might have ideas and guidance as to how we can get funding as well. So is not to volunteer, but did we decide the communications group is kind of digging into the grant sources, or where did we land with all that?
I don't think anybody said that.
Okay.
Nice try, Karen. Nice try.
Who cares to handle that?
Yeah, phantom comment.
We found ways to spend money.
Ah, okay.
They've come up with the ways of of spending the money.
Okay.
Right.
I wanted to add one
Oh.
point of clarification. I know a lot of grant tours also will restrict and say you cannot use this funding to give out funding. So
Mhm.
it's not the case across the board, but a lot of them know that we've had that idea and they're
Mhm.
getting ahead of that. So
Right,
it's
right.
worth looking out for that as well.
Well, and in that way, like, because do you really need a middle person, or as a commission, and this gets out to more the marketing and the communication side, if we're publicizing grants for arts organizations to be that helpful, like go here, and then we don't actually have to get involved in handing the money out.
That's what I was thinking too with the speaker
workshop,
series or
yep.
things like that, or the workshops would be, we
Educational.
help you find the resources. We're
Yes.
not the resource.
There's, yeah.
Mhm.
And if we ever get
It
to,
almost seems like it's another work group.
Yeah.
The grant related element is almost it's a big enough piece that it would almost be another work group.
if you ever get to a point where you decide that the ACC wants to hand out grants, that's the point at which you probably want to establish a trust
Yeah.
to take in funds where you can provide grants.
Just for the sake of this conversation, is it possible to have Sean send the original ordinance that created this group? So I know what restrictions we're hiding within.
It's right on the website, isn't it?
Is it up? Okay. Oh, it's on the, oh, right, before we
Wait,
say.
Well, it'll still be
I
on
can
there,
send it
just
to
not
you.
so- Not the front page.
Yeah.
I can send it to you too.
So are we creating another work group or are we just putting this into an existing work group? Because I think we need to make a decision on that. Sounds like we need to get the ball rolling on this sooner rather than later, right?
So
Like
would
an
the work
executive
group
committee.
fund and write the grants? Is that, or whoever is new work group / established work group? Is that what we're thinking?
Don't we have to figure out what we need money for first? I mean, isn't that
Right.
that was the
Yeah.
point of this conversation?
Right, exactly, like,
Like clarifying.
well, it's a, I mean, I think to Emma's good point, there's a marketing side to it and a programming side. I would appreciate a little more time maybe to think on it.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is there's some immediate or more immediate need for marketing. And that's a small ask. That sounds like it's a couple $100
Dollars,
to print some
right.
black cards and postcards. So I guess the question would be,
Right.
knowing we have no budget, if we
Well,
need a
yeah.
few $100s to print a few things, is that something that could be absorbed into your budget? Or how do we go about funding that for the very short term?
I'd have to get back to you.
Okay,
No, I mean, there's no line item for it, so
Okay.
that I'd have to poke around and find out how does one.
But the question really is whether you have discretionary funds.
yeah, right. I guess that's,
I
thank
think-
you, Jeffrey.
Yeah,
That's
he
the-
answered that last time. I think it's. a
No, he
matter-
dodged it last time. We
Did I?
And kicked it down the road. a little.
I have a budget. I do.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I got that cleared.
well
last
played.
It's a matter of, has he worked in the funding for this into that budget? And that the answer is probably no, that it's.
Right,
Yeah.
but
Right, but I mean, if we go to him and say, can we have a couple of $100 for a rack card, can he just say, look in his little wallet and say, yeah, I've got it?
it's possible.
For things that are that small, obviously, like Kate said,
Yeah, yeah.
10, 20. $100, $200 item.
Yeah, I mean, we were gonna look at some low cost printing options to see, how much, we had
Right.
3 or 4 ideas.
So why don't we get a quote on it?
Yeah,
And-
let's get a quote.
Share.
Right. Yeah, this is the key is knowing what you want and then we'll see. Because I sit on the Energy Advisory Committee as well, and the Energy Advisory Committee regularly has to do things like send out mailings.
Mhm.
And so we design the mailer ourselves as committee, and then we come up with the budget. How much is it gonna cost to print it? And how much is it gonna cost the city to mail it? And then we just ask.
Ask.
So, because there are some
Right.
discretionary funds there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
So a quote to you, Sean, with a pricing quote of what the request is.
Yep.
And you can let us know from there.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
just to get the ball rolling, we don't necessarily know what we need and how much we need, but I do think there's benefit in starting some research to figure out where we might be able to get money from at some point without putting in grant requests and all that. I would be happy to start to take a little crack at this,
Great.
to start to do a little research on where can art commissions get municipal and federal funding from? And see if I can find anything to share that, if that would be
Sounds great.
helpful.
Great.
Since I voluntold, I'm volunteering.
Karen,
So-
send me an email. I'll send you some.
Awesome, okay,
Thank you, Karen.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, those are some great next steps and all good questions. All right, for the last few minutes, burning issues, Jeffrey, for homestays for guest actors and artists.
Well, the reason I brought this up is in several times, Jason has mentioned the need that the Seacoast rep has for temporary housing for the visiting artists. And I think others do. And then one day I had this idea that maybe the model like visiting nurses have a way, they come and they have 3-month stays, things like that. And so I'm not meaning to get into an Airbnb discussion, but I'm just wondering if like a homestay model of finding housing in spare rooms in people's homes throughout the community is a model that might be workable if we like that idea, and if we do like the idea, to brainstorm a little bit on how we could make it happen, other than using the major platforms to take huge fees and all that stuff.
I know there is a website. Specifically, it's not only for nurses, but it is short-term stays. That's not Airbnb. It's designed for travel. And I actually looked at it for my program and just messaged one person, and they were totally pumped. Like, they were like, yeah, I'd love to have you like stay at this furnished place. Sadly, I had already found an apartment, but it's like you look at a calendar, pick your dates, and then you just message them, and you don't have to be a nurse, but it is for short-term stays that are longer than what an Airbnb would be. I have the website somewhere, but that might be a good just like resource to promote as well. Cause you just directly talk to the homeowner. What kind of things they do.
And I know someone who is always renting rooms to visiting nurses, so I mean, I can just check with her and see how she connects up with them. Find out if there's something in there we can learn.
Right, so I mean, it would take like recruiting a number of homeowners who are interested in hosting artists to maybe make a resource base or whatever that they could list and say, we're interested in musicians, we're interested in actors or whatever. But of course, it would need city sanctioning because, as you know, I mean, the city is kind of iffy about the whole short-term rental thing. But we're not talking about anything where we're taking housing out of the market because we're doing it only as owner occupied.
Your matchmaking.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
I just looked too really quickly. The website I'm talking about is called Furnished Finder. A good first step could be to see what we have in the area for Portsmouth on there. People who are already maybe renting out spots in our area.
Yeah.
There's like a.
I mean, we have to see what their fee basis is because like Airbnb takes a huge markup. And we don't want to be in that kind of situation.
Well, I think the trade-off is you don't want to be in the place of creating a new platform that no one knows is there. And so that's, I think there's some in-betweens between the big guys like Airbnb and maybe looking at some of these, because if you try to create your own platform, it's people who are out there are not necessarily going to find it.
Okay.
Hmm.
So we'll look into Furnish Finder and see if it's a potential platform that we could then encourage city residents to sign up for this purpose. All right, thanks.
If it's for the sake of promotion, I'd also say we could endorse, if there are good like safety and liability
Right.
measures that we find in some of this research, because everybody's gonna have their own policies. If we find a good example, you know, that's the kind of thing we can promote as well. Like if you would like to consider hosting artists of your own, here are some of the things that we've viewed that seem pretty successful. Some of the models. It doesn't need to be an existing model is what I mean. Like if somebody just wants to host artists in their home in the city of Portsmouth, here were some guidelines to maybe point you in the right direction of some other organization doing that.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, it seems like a just very broad floodgates open. Airbnb has strict policies for the people who would be staying there. They need to follow all those guidelines.
Okay. Well, I didn't really follow what you said that well.
It's all good.
All right, but I will look into Furnish Finder and see if there's other existing platforms that we could tap into and, you know, and try and basically be matchmaker.
I wonder if there's also a website that already exists for artists, theatrical artists, performing artists already that they can tap into nationally that's specifically for artists that might already exist. And second stupid question, but is this permissible in Portsmouth right now, or is it not if you're in the home and you're just trying to rent a room? I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know.
I think that's a gray area, is what I would say.
Mhm.
I think it's a gray area. I think that there is, if you're residential in Portsmouth, you're residential and you're non-commercial.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and that's the way that we have managed to control to some degree Airbnb development in the city is
Well,
that if
is
you're in
it-
a residential zone, you're residential.
Is it a home occupation?
I think that if we start messing with that, we will lose it altogether. That's, we have to be careful.
Mhm.
And we have to be even more careful if we're advocating as a commission.
Right, because you're speaking on behalf of city council.
Like, I'm not
Mhm.
sure, I'm not even sure that they would post that for us. If we're
Mhm.
not, if we haven't gone through all the legalese of it.
I think matchmaking, I mean, it's one thing. There is, there's like foreign exchange, high school foreign exchange, all the foreign exchanges, and they're looking for hosts. That's one thing. I think it's different once it becomes a commercial enterprise when people are paying.
Yeah.
So that's,
So like
Um,
if there were residents who wanted to host an artist or a performing artist, that would be different than, yeah, for free than renting a room out.
which I think people used to do for Seacoast Rep. So people would host artists
Yep.
in the summer. So, and I think that that's a possibility.
So if it was as you were hosting and maybe as far as it is a donation type situation, maybe they get, if you're hosting, you get access to whatever the venue is for something. So like you get access to the shows, or you get, if you choose to do so, but it would be on a, you know, you're just opening your home and it's, you know, not a matter of per fee.
Sounds like a great business plan to me.
Yeah.
Well, there are also
Win-wins
local
and-
motels and hotels that do offer that. I mean, different organizations have different relationships with different venues. But, you know, it would be great to know what they are,
Right.
you know. I mean, yeah, we have one that we always go to and we offer them free tickets, and in exchange, they give us several free rooms when we need them. So.
Nice. All right, also being mindful of time, I think we'll, so hopefully that's some beginning there of additional things. And so we had, I know, yes, so we'll go Kate and then Emma.
If we're at the other items section, I
Yes.
just had something that
Yeah.
I was going to promote here and see if anyone was interested. The state of New Hampshire eliminated its film office in 2021 during the pandemic. It used to be part of the tourism office, so there's no film office. We're one of only 5 states in the country that does not have a film office, meaning there's no one to promote film, and we have no incentives for films to be filmed here. Whereas Massachusetts is one of those with the biggest film office, and it drives tourism to a great degree. So there was a request at the film festival this weekend for us to start looking into ways to support reinstating a state film office. But one of the things that came up is cities can become a film ready city. And film offices often do that. They certify a city as film ready, which means that there's a streamlined process to get approvals and to shoot a film within that community. And so one of the things that I'm interested in looking into is ways to make Portsmouth a film ready community. Would be the first one in the state. We can do that and maybe then drive that movement then across the state.
Do you know what happens today?
What?
People call me.
I'm so sorry, Sean.
Oh, no. And I ask them what they're doing.
How can we help? Like,
And
what's
I-
the next steps?
I approve.
Hmm.
And then if they need a police detail, I connect them to the police. And then the police will charge them for their detail, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So by default, the film requests roll to my office.
Okay. That's.
So it's pretty streamlined. I'll
It's
just say.
economic development, yes.
Yeah.
I would like to create so that we have a process. So that maybe we can try to, and we'll start talking to the people at the state, see if we can get certified as film ready. That we can make things a streamlined process, if that means setting up hotels that are willing to offer discounts and, for film crews and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If,
Today, there's no infrastructure, but if we needed to create infrastructure, that's a different conversation.
yeah, so I just want to start having that conversation and if anyone's interested, just let me know, because that's something I think I'm going to work on.
Right.
On the side.
We get a lot of film requests at Strawberry Bank, so we're a natural.
Oh,
partner.
good.
I mean, a lot, some, yeah.
Okay.
People like filming around old buildings.
That people like filming in old buildings. That's why I think Portsmouth's the natural place to be maybe the first in the state. So, and it would be really great for our downtown businesses in off season.
Yes.
I think a good first step would be like coming up or figuring out what the list of like requirements is to become film ready. And then is there like low hanging fruit that we can just knock off and start working on?
Mhm.
Yeah, I see.
How many films have been filmed already in the city to show a little leverage? I don't know the answer to that. Which one?
A few.
Love and what's it called?
I-
No.
Yes, but there've been a few filmed here, so there's.
Yeah.
There's one where they put mountains behind the.
That's the one I'm talking about.
They're the one at the sex store. And every time that scene would come up, everyone would laugh. and
Yeah.
get in the direction.
The mountains
Someone
behind
said,
the North Church.
Why is everybody laughing?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. neat.
okay.
Kate, I would just like to say I would be interested. And I know some of my colleagues would be very interested.
Okay.
I always say, does anybody remember when they painted the leaves on the trees in the John Paul Jones house? They were filming it there, one of the old, because that used to be the house for the paint commercials.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
leaves weren't bright enough, so they were painting them.
I totally love it.
That's art.
Yeah.
Well, my sister-in-law was in Lost Horizon.
Last question related to this. Assuming we're gonna have a finished rack card soon, are there events coming up that anybody knows about where we should have those? Is there any organization represented here? Where should those rack cards go? Are there any high profile events where we should plan on having a presence in the next 2 months, 60 days? Anybody?
Halloween parade?
Candlelight stroll,
Yeah.
Yeah, let's roll some big news.
Vintage Christmas.
vintage Christmas.
Yeah.
Downtown.
Bars for gingerbread, yeah.
Yeah.
The welcome centers, obviously.
And also just first Fridays, have them available at various venues,
Yeah, in the library.
Art around town.
library, yeah.
Yeah.
Right town.
Yeah, the chamber manages art around town, so I wonder if we could get a stack to Ben and he could
Yeah.
make sure all the venues have them.
I think we have one last fairly quick
did.
burning issue.
We got an email, a request to our website, someone, so I'm gonna read that off. From an individual who is a published poet and an MFA student here in Portsmouth, is looking to start a healing arts focused collaborative impact project. And has a potential fiscal sponsor, but wants, opportunities for funding and grants and would like any guidance, resources, or contacts that we could share. Again, it's a poet looking to start a healing arts focused collaborative impact project. This is outside my area of expertise, so I open it to the whole group to say, is there anyone who I could forward this to if you'd be willing to be in touch with her, or anyone who knows of any resources they could send my way that I could share with her?
The Portsmouth Poet Laureates Program
Okay.
would be a great resource. Dianelli Antigua, who is the past
Yeah.
poet laureate, who does a lot of healing poetry work. And she does that through Haven. So Haven also has experience doing
Nice, yeah.
healing and, work around healing arts. So Kathy Beebe would be a great contact on that. Those are my first thoughts. TMATRX is still really involved in that.
Emily Killinger, the Arts and Health Coordinator at the State Council on the Arts.
Thank you.
Those are great. Yeah, I think that's a good.
That's solid. I can go from there.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I know we're a few minutes over, but thank you, everyone. Great conversations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.